I'm Ryan O'Doud, and you're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Today we continue with the Psychic Bible, the apocryphal scriptures of Genesis P-Orridge, and the third mind of the Temple of Psychic Youth. Section 119, The Green Book, Part 12. Dedicated to the IDS, quote-unquote. This was the last TOPY Station Ratio 5 Bulletin, 1991. This is a restricted access internal document intended for special circulation only and should not be copied or in any form transmitted to non-individuals of the Temple of Psychic Youth. They speak panic. They conquer from within, whispering words of panic to an inner ear, suggesting conniving, adding brushstrokes to the pictures of the last few days. And we are mere understudies, mere lookalikes. The curtains rose on these histrionics with the birth of man. Long before the first crude figures were daubed in the half-light of ancient caves, they were here, waiting with infinite patience. We have never been alone. There are other indigenous to this spinning ball, trapped in some phantom zone, waiting for the kill, the sacrifice, the second and final death. The father of Grok the clown, having had his legs broken in 8 places by his father for professional reasons, broke Grok's legs in 8 places, to be certain that the child would grow up walking grotesquely so as to ensure his eminence as a clown. We are the spinning, hobbling, waddling clowns in the eyes of our secret police, the livestock and the farmer. Humans can be programmed with any belief or attitude. The human does not possess free will, quote unquote. We do not control our personal convictions, our opinions, or our feelings. None of these are constant. We are composed of many eyes, such a crystallization of opposite belief. When the wind changes, one eye blows away, another steps forward. All of these eyes revolve around an absent center, penetrate the veils of personality. Within there is nothing. Beyond a series of successfully more tenuous masks, a hollow core, but not quite hollow. A puppet master sits and presides, a foreign body. When you walk down a street, your eyes are presented by a continuously changing perspective. Every visible object slides across your field of vision in a precise geometrical relationship to reinforce the illusion that one is really walking through 3-dimensional space. I thought it was permissible to sit in my comfortable armchair and doze, as it didn't seem anything particular was happening. No one is demanding my attention, so why should I feel guilty just to drift? Once I opened my eyes again, I saw the facts of my situation. My comfortable chair became the seat in the cockpit of an aircraft, flying 50,000 feet above the earth, quite out of control, guided only by a long obsolescent automatic pilot. Despite the enormity of danger this situation presented, I sought the oblivion of sleep once more. It's hardly ever now that I panic, and stirring briefly, kick spastically at the controls, striking random levers. We are content to see nothing. We have no control. It doesn't even feel like failure. We thought the world was merely a question of gathering. We didn't understand that knowledge is kept under heavy guard. We thought that to see a door implied the probability of its opening. We waited and waited until finally such a great lethargy came over us that we were compelled to drop our aspirations or seek their fulfillment in a purely imaginary landscape. We have never been alone. The door is fastidiously patrolled. There are and always have been those amongst us only seemingly human. Reality is there, but we do not see it. It is fashionable these days to view the universe as a quote-unquote associative domain of consciousness. The notion of an observer-created universe, that reality is essentially subjective, might perhaps appeal and comfort, but it is an imaginary state of affairs. It is a tremendous conceit. There is reality that in no way needs our participation to ensure its continued existence. The universe is not conditional on human population. Our notions that we have only to become whole, filled with joy to see a corresponding change in the universe, contacting friendly angels and so forth, is really an insufferable arrogance. There is nothing out there that cares. There are no guardian angels, holy or otherwise. Were we to possess any real degree of consciousness, we would have the facility of being able to immediately discern truth from falsity, reality from imagination. There is a distinction. Individuals approaching critical breakthrough point on the edge of evolutionary transition, the strange attraction to a new order of being, are ruthlessly attacked by the fear arm. They are either broken down, paranoid schizophrenia, demonomania, cardiac arrest, chronic migraine, suicide, or radiation sickness, or initiated into new belief systems, arteries quickly hardening, lusting to relocate the nullity of mind on Earth. Individuals are attacked and herded like sheep, duped to false flower garden. Like pawns in a vast chess, our magnetic center, that part of us which is drawn towards the search for freedom, is taken without consent because we are believing creatures, born to grow fat on belief, force-fed with belief, turned towards blind alleys along which we will forever stray. We sleep on eternally, dreaming that we are awake, and the UTs are the dream masters. Our conclusion: UTs draw their vital sustenance from the tapping of the human state of arrested evolution. At critical transition points in human development, belief circuitry is activated, which acts as a conduit for the life energy. That we are not in control, that we are not alone. These are facts of our existence. Everything you have known and thought to be true up until this point is a lie. You are stupid and you are asleep. All your systems of knowledge are based upon an absence of understanding. You talk of progress, yet you still have to begin. What you have is worth nothing because it was not had through struggle, but through accident. You have wandered clumsily, and beneath everything, underlying all your squalid joys, hopes, trials, and tribulations, your vestigial dances, you are overwhelmed with misery, a suppressed emergency. Not one person understands another. Almost everything in life is wrong. There can be no accurate meaning. It is all accidental. Nothing is controlled, at least by us. We are thrall to the law of accident, a tall story of hypnotic alliance, and every little thing, a foul fix of blank kidnapping time. Our experience of life is a continual succumbing to inertia, always abandoning for the anesthetic solace of black wings. We talk about love, about truth. We have never known love or truth. Up until now, they have not existed. They are but a distant rumor. We are like spoiled little children. We presume consciousness, but we are asleep. We presume the universe accommodates us, but it does not care. We presume our thoughts can change the universe, but it will never change. Forget the universe, forget your humanity. At the end of the day, there is only you. You in your small corner, you in your hell, you in your personality. What is it that sucks the spit from your eye? What dim crave is the sound of your love? See it parade everything it cannot uncover. The world blocked out with one hand. The only way to begin is to try and realize that you are asleep. It is no good to say, I am asleep. You have to realize it. There is a great inertia which works against us in this. There is the inertia which had been imposed throughout long years of social conditioning. Even should this inertia be overcome, additional external pressures come into play. Simply put, there is something out there that doesn't want you to learn. Some people are very conceited indeed. They decide that they can perform magic and influence the very fabric of time and space in a cat's whisker. And all of this without ever pausing to remember that they are asleep. Western occult traditions are practically valueless. If you want freedom, if you really want to wake up from your sleep, then the occult is probably the last path you should follow. It's the idiot's road, the idiot's love of distraction, another game to keep you from the real work. Forces malign, coupled with typical human inertia generated through thousands of years of false learning, combine to produce a deterrent so powerful that it is a rare individual indeed who could only possibly hope to persevere through such an ordeal. The ordeal, objective verification of all experimental hypotheses through intense study of oneself. Resignation, however, is not an option. If escape is not achieved, and if the hidden hand does not snuff out your candle, the likelihood is entrance into and adoption of a rigid system of beliefs based on certain clues or keys occurring in the original work. These clues may have originated from dream, vision, visitation, voice, etc. Once keys have been formulated as such and begin to cohere into a belief system, the real work has, for all practical purposes, been terminated. What then happens is a gradual slide into redundancy, stagnation, and obsolescence. Such beliefs present only minute fragments of a larger jigsaw and in themselves are an index to nothing. Their beliefs are wholly induced by external agencies in their bid to prevent the larger picture coming into view, and to rule out the possibility of real breakthrough with the work. The so-called born-again phenomena is one clear example. The UFO and associated phenomena constitute a vast panoply of bizarre and inexplicable events, spawning an equally broad spectrum of theory and belief. Evidence contradicts itself. It's like a big box full of parts from 50 different jigsaws. This is called the confusion effect. It is quite intentional. The pivot of meaning, the space between a possibility and a belief, is the threshold of knowledge. The agencies which subvert real knowledge and channel it into harmless and passive beliefs are the guardians of the threshold. Through the manipulation of belief, a shiny silver slug's trail of disparate clues, these agencies seek to control the destiny of life on this planet, by default. Sentient, discorporate beings, ultra-terrestrials from neither outer nor inner space. An order of beings which resides within the same spatio-temporal coordinates as ourselves, on a different vibratory level of matter. Clearly, they possess the facility to access our vibratory level of matter and can phase into our physical reality. The act of intervention requires energy, blood sacrifice, vampirism, or simple appropriation, a dead cow or a stalled engine. The men in black are amongst the crudest yet paradoxically most sophisticated manifestations of ultra-terrestrials. Apparently minion shock troops, as it were, they come from below and have a sense of humor to match. Their aim is the inculcation and escalation of fear. They circumvent possible transmission of witness accounts. If necessary, they have license to kill. Another level of UT manifestation is the knowledge giver, the dispenser, the great holy pharmacist. This is the direct hacking of the human herding disposition, laying down bugs with post-operative delayed effect, often years. Look back into your childhood, down a foggy gray tunnel. A guy dressed in all black ever whisper in your ear? Carefully staged theater, visitation, dream, vision, angelic conversation. In the midst of subtly induced delirium, certain knowledge introduced. Small scraps of panic, little shards of counterfeit heaven. And then God disappears, leaving you on a yellow brick road preternaturally glowing. Puppetry. True knowledge is a matter of control. Counterfeit knowledge is a matter of promulgation and worship. Our growth is forestalled, deferred by the friendliness of gods and angels. We have no will of our own, because we are bound to beliefs generated from without, spoken within. Every belief is the ragged claw marked by a long-gone parasite. The vital sustenance has been drawn. We are dead, until the next time asleep and in very great danger, on the wings of a nightmare. 1 minute absolute confidence and assurance, the next all is lost. That is the way we are constructed, built up to fall down. No substance, no backbone, transported by brief glories only to end up more crippled, more irrevocably broken than ever before. And all to no purpose of our own, because we never retain anything, never build on anything other than sand, never reaching and touching, never finding anyone. Your mute suffering achieves nothing, doubled over with gut pains, gut suffering, black vomit accreting on your feet, never finding anything worth finding, always thrown back in the same freeze frame of horror. You found comfort with others, apparently sharing the same misery. There was a solace in that, a small place to stay and breathe in, look out of, never daring to remember you had to leave. Be alone once more, it has to happen. Others forget you, achieve some miracle escape of circumstance, spinning off into further mad orbits of their own. The trappings don't matter. All that matters to you is that they're gone, your haven destroyed. Perhaps it's the same for them. There's really no way of knowing. This is what it's like to be asleep. No comfort, no escape, no presence, no satisfaction. It's the warmth where you just sat as you leave for another cold seat. That's what hurts. Nowhere left to go, no place to stay. They were consigned to their phantom zone before we were a glint in Horace's eye, turning in fear and loathing, gradually sieving through the sands of knowledge and being, locating their truth, finding their source and path and way to do. We can't call it consciousness, it's merely a modality of instinct. Having no sex, they located ours as surrogates. They don't need it, they don't want it, need only to play with our fascination and horror of it, no further their escape. If they draw us away in the body and what it means, the further body is attainable in what they mean, the law of reciprocity, then they win. We approach the second and final death, which means death for us all, death for the believers, another Holocaust, the infidels live and escape their prison, their karmic cycle. The angels and gods know no sex, are completely without passion. Their seeds in our physical reality are sterile. Jesus on the cross, the cold plague of mass religion, sexless, denying carnal experience, mirroring the ultra-terrestrial landscape. Jesus was an ultra-terrestrial. The state of sexlessness is called iusu, a bitter joke. Sexual molestation is one of their most cynical manifestations. The Christ spirit is a shadow of a ravening thing, a twisted mirror of a worm-brained deity, struggling to escape the confines of its narrow cell, sending its spirit spores across to earth to wriggle in the body of a man on the cross. In the future, We live in screens, pure screens. The removal of ourselves, our identities, from the organic to the solid state. Our symbolisms are a succession of steps away from corporeal existence. We drive our cars as extensions of the physical body. We conduct our lives through the screen, through the shift of perspective, barely deigning to move slow, leaden limb across the screen of our projection, repeatedly steps removed. The ecstasy of information vertigo, the vertiginous heights of our ambition, the cold sheen of a new orgasm, leaving beyond forever the ancient mysteries for a new sacred, the information ecstatic, the imminent execution of world holocaust through the neutral screen is the countdown to the second and final death. From religion to technology, the voice whispers, babbles on in the inner ear. How would an eagle feel if it were hatching chicken's eggs? At first, the eagle thinks that it will hatch little eagles, whom it is going to bring up to be big eagles. But what comes out of the eggs is always nothing but little chicks. Desperate, the eagle keeps hoping that the chicks will turn into eagles after all. But no, at the end they are nothing but cackling hens. When the eagle found this out, it had a hard time suppressing his impulse to eat up all the chicks and cackling hens. What kept it from doing so was a small hope. The hope, namely, that among the tiny cackling chicks there might be, one day, a little eagle capable of growing up into a big eagle, capable like itself, to look from its lofty perch into a far distance in order to detect new worlds, new thoughts, and new forms of living. You want the truth in a mirror where you can't grasp it. You have entered the world quite accidentally and will silently leave it again. Only the truth is your first will make you the master of this earth. Yet you set security before the truth. You are cowardly in your thinking because real thought is accomplished by bodily feelings, and you are afraid of your body. You have built everything upon sand, your house, your life, your culture and civilization, your science and technology, your love and your education of children. You don't know it, you don't want to know it, and you slay the great man who tells it to you. You built your house on sand, and you all did this because you are incapable of feeling life in yourself, because you kill love in your child even before it is born, because you cannot tolerate any alive expression, any free natural movement. With the greatest consistency, your thinking always misses the truth, just as a playful sharpshooter is able to consistently hit right beside the bullseye. You always think in too short of terms, just from breakfast to lunch. You must learn to think back in terms of centuries and forward in terms of thousands of years. You have to think in terms of living life, in terms of your development from the first plasmatic flake to the animal man which walks erect but cannot yet think straight. You have no memory even for things which happened 10 years ago, or even this year, and so you keep repeating the same stupidities you said 2,000 years ago. You cling to your stupidities as a louse clings to fur. You do not dare see how deeply you stick in the morass of your misery. Every once in a while you stick your head in the morass of your misery. Every once in a while you stick your head out of the morass to yell, "Heil!" The croaking of a frog in a marsh is closer to life. There is never any progress. Everything remains the same as it has been for tens of thousands of years. The outward form changes, the essence does not. Man remains just the same. Civilized and cultured people live with exactly the same interest as the most primitive savages. Contemporary civilization is based on violence and slavery and fine words, but all those fine words about progress and civilization are merely words. There are machines, not people. People who no longer consider why they are here at all. They merely exist, surrounding themselves with false illusory reasons for living, to pass the time before they die. Millions of dead souls. The children are already dead. They were dead before they were even born. The cycle has come full circle, and we are living out our last moments. It is 5 minutes to midnight. Yet people refuse to recognize it as such. They are told lies, and they believe them. The end is here or there. The beginning is nowhere. The struggle from the exterior to the interior. From the interior to the exterior. In between is the void. Yet the pain of anger is never enough. Whoever puts you here is manipulating you. It's always been that way. Now it destroys. To many of us, only the sound and rhythm of our breathing reminds us that we are alive. Upon Melanceus wings it broods over this earth, deriving the energy that will sustain and evolve it, an evil thing that is exploiting us. It obscures the stars, a vast black vampire. The flux between that which isn't and that which won't be, or the state that is commonly and absurdly called existence, is merely a rhythm of heavens and hells, and is intermediate to both, uninhabited. We are all uninhabited. Inside all of us is nothing. This manipulation comes from the initial incursion of ultra-terrestrial influences into the human life wave, attracted to the individual embryo or sperm as an effective means of incarnating genetic mutations. We've been damned by giants sound asleep, or by civilized concepts and abstractions that cannot realize themselves. Those little harlots have visited their caprices upon us. Those dark clowns have anathemized us for laughing so disrespectfully, because as with all clowns, underlying buffoonery is the desire to be taken seriously. We've been damned by corpses and skeletons and mummies, which twitch and totter with pseudo-life derived from conveniences. Once upon a time, this earth was a no-man's land that other levels of vibratory existence explored and fought over for colonization. Mankind won the battle for colonization, yet now the earth is literally owned by something. All others are warned off. The ultra-terrestrials are the beings which exist in the same space-time coordinates as life on Earth, yet on a different vibratory level. They exist as parasites on human consciousness. As beings that exist as pure vibratory energy, they need the energy that human consciousness contains in order to sustain themselves. That human energy has to be controlled if it is to be tapped effectively, and that is what they have done. We have been and continue to be consistently manipulated into belief systems that lead us to accept that we matter, we believe, we have faith, we accept. Why? To some, it represents a fundamental inherent human trait, the need to believe in something. All beliefs are based on the promise of the afterlife, but it's a promise based upon adhering to rigid behavioral rules during life, a life consisting of unquestioning acceptance of fundamentals, unquestioning belief and dedication to the rules significant to the particular belief system. They are, in all cases, structures that guarantee non-development and human involution, resulting ultimately in global destruction. There is something of ultra-pathos, of cosmic sadness, in the universal search for the belief system that one feels has been revealed by either unworldly inspiration or analysis. Clinging to it long after its insufficiency has been revealed is utterly hopeless. The only seemingly conclusive utterance, or seemingly substantial thing to cling to, is a product of dishonesty, ignorance, and fatigue. All belief structures go back until they're worn out or until something occurs that indicates a move forward. Belief systems limit human consciousness, inner development, and evolution. That is their sole aim, to bring human consciousness under control so that it may be farmed. We are the cattle for these ultra-terrestrials. Belief systems are the green grass upon which we spend our short lives grazing, safe and satisfied. Faith, prayer, rigid behavioral traits such as hatred, ignorance, and unquestioning obedience to all are the milk upon which these beings feed off of during human lifespans. Physical death and the transference of the undeveloped human consciousness into oblivion is the survival factor of these beings. It's the meat that keeps them alive, as it were, on their own plane of existence as forms of pure energy. Yet a characteristic that is inherent in human nature is the question of whether or not the grass we are made to eat is greener on the other side of the fence, or if some other kind of vegetation growing on the other side of the fence would be tastier. Small minorities are constantly searching and questioning for real answers to the question of absolute truth. They do not recognize any answers in any past or present belief systems. These minorities represent the gravest danger to the ultra-terrestrial conspiracy. These minorities search for the expansion of the human consciousness and the development of different levels of the human animal. The danger is not in the small minorities in themselves. They can afford to dispense with a few of the cows if they can escape by breaking down a section of the fence once in a while. But wait, can they really afford to? Of course they can't. Cows on the other side of the field may spot the break in the fence and escape over it too, if they have the inclination, and soon the small break in the fence would become a gaping hole, and the minority of escaped cows would become the majority, so no escapes can be allowed. Any individuals or minority group who threaten escape are subjected to the harshest punishment. The majority are also subject to this punishment. They know this, and they represent a formidable force working against the minority seeking to escape from the grip of the ultra-terrestrials, from the grip of the status quo. The ultra-terrestrials deliberately manufacture confusion across the globe, manufacture wars, sabotage any attempt at global cohesion. A close analogy would be a prisoner of war camp. The rules laid out were that anybody caught trying to escape would be immediately executed. They instilled fear. However, if anybody had the courage to attempt to escape despite this fear, which could only effectively occur in small numbers, all prisoners can't escape at once, then the majority of the prisoners in the prison world would suffer terrible hardship and torture at the hands of their captors. Therefore, there is the installed omnipresent pressure from the prisoners themselves to resist any small minority plans for escape, and so it is on planet Earth. Every man and woman who reaches a higher level of spiritual and intellectual awareness becomes more aware of the presence of a higher intelligence that is separate from the high human animal. They have become incorporated into rigid belief structures as angels or gods, but they are seldom viewed objectively. Any form of gnosis is destroyed. Any large-scale group illumination is usually forced to an end, either by majority human pressure or a breakup in the catharsis. Small minority groups are faced initially with the full force of mass human hostility, violence, destruction, and murder. However, they are also faced with a more sinister danger from the non-human sources, the ultra-terrestrials themselves. These beings play nasty and sometimes extremely violent and psychological games with these individuals and groups. The aim is to lull them into a dark, dead-end belief tunnel by exploiting the very strengths that set the individual apart and from the mass in the first place. These strengths are a willingness to observe the universe in a way that is totally removed from the mass perception of it. The tutelage of poles of belief. The ultra-terrestrials play with their perceptions of these individuals and minority groups. They do their best to lead them down avenues of pure self-deceit by presenting them with vivid alternative visions of reality and existence that are mere fronts for dead-end belief structures. Occurrences such as UFO sightings, contact with extraterrestrials, visions of angels, demons, gods, fairies, voices of superior beings informing them of the ultimate secret knowledge of the universe, these are presented in such a way that to escape the trap of being led into a belief system is almost impossible. It is very difficult to unbelieve something that is presented in a vivid way, and yet even more difficult when it is presented in such a way so as to align itself with your thought patterns at any one time. The ultra-terrestrials seem to have worked out a method of exploiting this very state of mind that such an individual may find him or herself in at any one time. However, individuals do exist outside of the effect of their belief engendering processes, and these individuals are ruthlessly hunted down and haunted by the men in black. These are the ultra-terrestrials assuming some kind of human form. They are very crude and imperfect human forms that exist as shock troops, and they have the ability to phase into our vibratory level from their own with the sole intention of guarding the knowledge that they possess of the real state of human consciousness. They are the guardians of knowledge. The individuals who assume an intermediate position are in the gravest danger of all. The men in black hold high positions of power in world government. Their controls are explicit in some countries, manifesting as mass extermination. In others, it is so insidious as to be invisible. Everything in intermediateness is not a thing, but an endeavor to become something. By breaking away from its continuity, or merging away with all other phenomena, is an attempt to break away from the very essence of a relative existence and become absolute, if it has not surrendered to or become part of some higher attempt. To this process there are two aspects: attraction, or the spirit of everything to assimilate all other things, if it has not already been assimilated by some higher attempted system, unity, organization, entity, or vibratory level, and repulsion, or the attempt of everything to exclude or disregard the unassimilable, a universal process. Anything is permitted, everything is true. To the intermediatist, everything that seems to have identity is only an attempted identity, and every species is continuous with all other species, or that which is called the specific is only emphasis upon some aspect of the general. Every idea and belief is a mere conflict. Every conversation is a conflict of missionaries, each trying to convert the other, to assimilate, or to make the other similar to himself. If no progress is made, mutual repulsion will follow. Beings on other vibratory levels have attempted positivizations to extend themselves upon Earth to assimilate the indigenous inhabitants of this Earth. All things merge away into everything else. That is continuity. The system merges away and evades us when we try to focus against it. Out of the negative absolute, the positive absolute is generating itself, recruiting or maintaining itself via third state, or our own quanti state. It would seem that we're trying to conceive of universalness, manufacturing more universalness from nothingness. Out of unreality, instead of nothingness, reality, instead of universalness, is via our own quasi-state manufacturing more reality. Intermediateness is a relation between the positive absolute and the negative absolute. In intermediateness, there is neither free will nor a slave, but will but a different approximation for every so-called person toward one of the other of the extremes. All intermediationists feel a lurking fear that they will be forced into solidification and dogmatism and evolve into higher positivists. All things in this immediate state are phantoms in a supermind, in dreaming state, striving to awaken to realness. By manipulating the human race globally into pure and simple ignorance, and by engendering human systems based on fear, hatred, war, mass extermination, destruction, and death concurrently, with enormous developments in terms of technology, it seems inevitable that we have only a short time left before mass destruction occurs. This seems to have been the ultra-terrestrials' plan all along. They have developed a global scheme where all human animals are at the very moment of global destruction in a state of total confusion, undevelopment in terms of human life, and each and every person fragmented from each and every other person around. Also that they may, at that moment of mass human destruction and death, feed off of the sheer mass of unfocused and undeveloped human consciousness that will be thrown into oblivion. The massive release of human consciousness will enable them to ascend to a higher level of energy, and one which doesn't depend upon the existence of human life at all. Our urgency is great, but we fear that mass human ignorance is the end that has already occurred. What remains is nothing, with mere nowhere to go. In the end, we are all still cows, even if we do manage to escape over the fence. The only mass change in consciousness which will occur is the one that will happen 1 second from the end. Then all will become realized, and of course it will be too late. The Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, the first and the last, and now the last is reaching the first, and the end is the beginning. All things are returning to their original. The heart shattered to shivers, ground to dust. Everything in the world obeys the law of three. Everything existing came into being in accordance with the law. Combinations of positive and negative principles can only produce new results that are different from the first and second only if a third force comes in. The absolute creates in accordance with the same law. Take the ray of creation. At the top is in the absolute, God the Word divided into three, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. In our human systems, we are the same as God, threefold. If we consciously receive three matters and send them out, we can construct outside what we like. This is creation. All three forces manifest through us and blend outside. Every creation is either subjective or objective. The life of man plays the same role as planets in relation to Earth, relation to Moon, and all suns in relation to our sun. Passive man serves involution, and active man evolution. In both cases we are slaves, for in both cases we have a master. We are a whole system within. One center of us affirms, the other denies. It is impossible to free oneself from it. Only he is free who stands in the middle. Intermediately, it is very difficult. We are slaves, we are weak. In order to become intermediate, one has to go against the law of nature itself. The power of changing oneself lies not in the mind, but in the body and the feelings. Unfortunately, however, our body and our feelings have been genetically constituted so as to not care about anything so long as they are happy. They live for the moment and their memory is short. The mind alone lives for tomorrow. Each has its own merits. The key to all the manipulation is the fact that a lack of connection in us between the body, feeling, and mind has not been recognized. The majority have become so deformed that there is no longer any common language between one part and another. It is irretrievably lost. The only thing left for these individuals who seek intermediate existence is to establish a connection in a roundabout way, a fraudulent way. And these ways must be very subjective, since they must depend on a person's character and the form his inner makeup has taken. Establishing subjectivity in order that this connection may be built requires that the individual takes himself ruthlessly apart, becomes totally aware of the false layers of illusion that make up his or her character, and rigorous self-remembering. Associative thought and behavior has to be destroyed. Conscious faith is freedom. Emotional faith is slavery. Mechanical faith is foolishness. The only worthwhile existence is to strike while all fists are clenched. Fear is the refuge of the weak, and we are all riddled with it. The only aim is to find the pearl buried in the manure. He who fights with monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster, and when you gaze long enough into abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Truth asserted against and triumphing over error. Evil is outlived virtue, or incipient virtue that has not yet established itself. We are faced with a new dominant, the Pandrogyne. In the darkness, a contorted face writhing in agony appears before us. It is our own face reflected in the darkness of our own pain, screaming in the agony of a birth long overdue. We shall have an outcry of silences. I leave you all in a fine mess. Changed priorities ahead. Genesis P-Orridge, TOPY Station, UK, 1991. Thus concludes section 119 of the Psychic Bible. Tomorrow we will continue with section 120. The process is the product. Part 13.